Another Mormon scandal is unfolding in the American Southwest, and this one doesn't involve some obscure bishop hidden away in a tiny Utah town. This one centers around a nationally known sheriff, a man conservatives once called America's Sheriff, a polished television lawman who built an image around faith, patriotism, family values, and border security, a man personally endorsed by Donald Trump. But behind the campaign rallies, the cowboy hats, and the carefully crafted image of the righteous LDS family man, women are now coming forward with allegations involving secret relationships, sexting, intimidation, and threats that they say destroyed marriages, shattered families, and sent shockwaves through Mormon social circles across Arizona. We've seen this movie before. According to a bombshell investigation by the Arizona Republic, church officials inside the LDS hierarchy were warned years ago, and some of the women involved claimed they were promised that something would be done about it all. Now, private messages, accusations of cover-ups, and whispers of retaliation are exploding into public view, just as Mark Lamb fights for political power once again. And in true Mormon scandal fashion, almost nobody involved appears to have escaped unharmed. Today we are talking about the Mormon Sheriff sex scandal. I'm your host, Stacy Lee. Let's begin. Before there was a scandal, there was a brand. And Mark Lamb may be one of the best examples in modern Arizona politics of a man who turned himself into one. If you lived anywhere in the Southwest during the last decade, you probably know the image. The cowboy hat, the sheriff's badge, the broad smile, the tough talk about the border, the unwavering devotion to God, family, and country. He wasn't just a sheriff, he was a character. A carefully cultivated symbol of what many conservative voters want a sheriff to be. Mark Lamb was born in Hawaii in 1972, but spent parts of his childhood moving throughout the world, including Arizona, Panama, Argentina, and the Philippines, before eventually settling back in Arizona as an adult. Before law enforcement, he worked in pest control and operated a paintball business that ultimately failed, leading to bankruptcy. What? A politician hiding bankruptcies and failures? No. Later, he entered policing and joined the Salt River Pima Maricopa Police Department, eventually working as a detective before moving to the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. That part of the story rarely makes the campaign brochures. The brochures usually skip straight to the transformation. The struggling businessman becomes the lawman becomes the sheriff, and the sheriff becomes a celebrity. In 2017, Lamb was elected sheriff of Pinal County, one of Arizona's fastest growing counties. At the time, Pinal was exploding with new residents. They were fleeing Phoenix housing prices. But the place still retains enough rural character to embrace cowboy culture and tough-on-crime politics. And Mark Lamb fit that environment perfectly. If somebody in a marketing department had been tasked with designing the ideal Arizona conservative sheriff in a laboratory, the result would look suspiciously similar. Tall, broad shoulders, cowboy hat permanently attached to that skull, Mormon, family man, conservative, border hawk. The package practically sold itself. Then television came calling. National audiences were introduced to Mark Lamb through Live PD, the enormously popular reality television show that turned local sheriffs and deputies into minor celebrities. Millions of viewers watched officers respond to calls in real time. Most sheriffs never become recognizable outside their county, but Mark Lamb became recognizable nationwide. Suddenly, he wasn't just a sheriff, he was America's Sheriff. At least that was the nickname he would eventually embrace. He appeared on television, hosted spin-off programming, conducted interviews, became a frequent guest on conservative media. And unlike many politicians who spend years trying to build a public image, Mark Lamb already had one handed to him. Television had done the work. Viewers saw the hat, the badge, the smile, the confident voice. What they didn't see was a politician in waiting. But that's exactly what Mark Lamb was becoming. He increasingly positioned himself as a national conservative figure. He spoke about border security, immigration, constitutional rights, and law enforcement. During COVID, he gained national attention after publicly stating he would not enforce Arizona's stay-at-home orders because he believed they were unconstitutional. The move made him a hero to many conservatives and dramatically increased his national profile. America's sheriff had become something larger, a movement figure, a conservative celebrity. And in modern politics, celebrity often matters more than experience. Then came the books and the interviews and the speaking engagements, the national media appearances. And throughout all of it, there was another crucial piece of the image, the Mormon piece. In Arizona's East Valley, Gilbert, Queen Creek, Mesa, that matters a lot. The Mormon Church isn't just a religion in parts of Arizona. It's a social network, a business network, a political network, a cultural identity. And Mark Lamb looked like exactly the kind of successful Mormon that family men and families alike admire. He frequently spoke about faith. His wife Janelle became part of the public image. The family presented themselves as resilient, devoted, and deeply religious. It was wholesome. Aggressively wholesome. The kind of wholesome that makes a person like me suspect somebody somewhere is hiding a body. Maybe not literally, probably, but American history has taught us something important. Whenever somebody spends an extraordinary amount of energy convincing the public that they are a moral example, that's when it's time to start checking the receipts. Eventually, Mark Lamb's carefully constructed image would collide with allegations so explosive they would end up on the front paper of Arizona's largest newspaper. And when that happened, the story wouldn't just threaten his political future. It would threaten the very thing that made him powerful in the first place, the image. The image was everything. And according to multiple women, the image isn't the whole story. Every scandal needs a contradiction. The bigger the contradiction, the bigger the story. And Mark Lamb's contradiction was almost too perfect. While he was building a reputation as an uncompromising defender of traditional values, he was simultaneously becoming one of the most visible Mormon political figures in Arizona. That wasn't accidental. It was central to his appeal. His campaign materials emphasized faith. His public speeches emphasized his Mormonism. His supporters frequently described him as a Christian family man. Well, he had a bigger problem now because if you missed it, Pete Hegseth just declared that Mormons are not Christians. Did you see that? According to the U.S. government, Mormonism is no longer recognized as a Christian religion. And suddenly, Mormons everywhere are upset about what it feels like to be told they're not valid. They don't belong here. Oh, well, imagine that. It's almost like there's a whole class of people of color and queer people that have been feeling that way for a long time. Mark Lamb was the perfect Mormon. His political operation highlighted God, family values, and traditional morality as core parts of his identity. Being Mormon doesn't make someone good. It certainly doesn't make someone bad. But in the heavily LDS communities of Arizona's East Valley, religious identity often functions as a kind of shorthand. Being a born and raised Utahn, I speak this shorthand well. People assume things. They assume discipline. They assume family stability. They assume sexual conservatism. They assume honesty. And you know what they say about assuming. Fair or unfair, that's reality. And Mark Lamb benefited enormously from these assumptions. The sheriff wasn't merely conservative, he was Mormon conservative, a very specific brand. The kind of brand that helps people overlook flaws because they think they already know who you are. Then came politics. By 2023, Mark Lamb believed he was ready for something bigger than the sheriff's office. He launched a campaign for the United States Senate, seeking the Republican nomination for the seat being vacated by Kyrsten Sinema. National Republicans took notice. Conservative media embraced him. Donald Trump praised him. And Mark Lamb presented himself as a border sheriff who understood the dangers facing America. The campaign message was simple. America is in trouble, and Mark Lamb can fix it. I just have to laugh there. When are we going to come together and wake up? Honestly, his whole campaign spiel was pretty effective. He looked good on television. He spoke confidently. He had law enforcement credentials. He had an established fan base from live PD. And he understood modern conservative media. What he lacked in political experience, he made up for in branding. A lot of branding. I'm going to be honest, I've watched these ads. They feel less like a sheriff's campaign and more like somebody has combined Yellowstone, Fox News, and a church fireside into one human being. For many voters, that worked, even though they say the F word in Yellowstone. My mom and dad don't like that. Even after losing the Senate primary to Kari Lake, oh Lord. In 2024, Lamb remained politically relevant. By 2025, he was preparing another run, this time for Congress in Arizona's deeply Republican 5th District. Trump gave him his endorsement, and many political observers considered Mark Lamb a serious contender. On paper, his future looked bright. But here's the problem with carefully constructed images. They're fragile. They depend upon one thing, people believing them. The moment doubt enters the picture, everything changes. By the time Mark Lamb began preparing his next campaign, allegations that had quietly circulated for years were beginning to escape the confines of private conversations. Former friends were talking. Former associates were talking. Former church members were talking. And there were screenshots, messages. The people who had once remained silent were no longer remaining silent. For years, these allegations have existed as whispers, the sort of thing that people don't talk about in the parking lot after church, not in the Mormon world anyway. It's the sort of thing that people lower their voices before mentioning, the sort of thing everyone says they want nothing to do with, especially when the person involved happens to be the sheriff, especially when the person involved happens to be politically connected and viewed as a local celebrity. But eventually whispers become reporting, and reporting becomes headlines. Headlines become front-page news. The perfect Mormon cowboy was about to discover that secrets have a terrible habit of escaping, particularly when multiple people know them. And according to the women at the center of this story, there were a lot of people who knew. What happened next would drag private relationships, church leaders, text messages, accusations of intimidation, and some very uncomfortable questions into public view. Questions that the LDS Church itself would eventually be forced to confront. Questions that threatened a congressional campaign. The story wasn't just about a sheriff anymore. It was about whether America's sheriff had been living a very different life when the cameras weren't rolling. In Mormon communities, scandals rarely explode all at once. They spread slowly, like water leaking through the drywall. First there are whispers, then awkward silences, then people suddenly stop sitting next to you at church. Marriages quietly collapse, then somebody moves wards, somebody disappears from social media, and eventually, years later, somebody finally talks. According to reporting from the Arizona Republic and later national coverage, that appears to be exactly what happened surrounding Mark Lamb. Long before the story became front-page news, rumors about Lamb allegedly engaging in inappropriate relationships had already been circulating privately inside Arizona Mormon circles. And not random circles either. These were interconnected Mormon families in Gilbert and surrounding East Valley communities, where church life and friendships and marriages, businesses, politics, they all overlap into one giant social ecosystem where somebody needs to know what's going on in everybody else's business. The woman who would eventually become central to the public scandal is Jillian Stannard. According to the reporting, Stannard said her marriage began unraveling after discovering communications involving her husband, Matt Hilzebeck, and Mark Lamb's social circle. Jillian alleged that relationships, sexting, and sexual behavior involving Mark Lamb had been hidden beneath the image of conservative Mormon respectability. And this wasn't just gossip about flirting. The allegations quickly became far more explicit. Now, this is from the Arizona Republic investigation. Women claim that Mark Lamb exchanged sexually explicit messages, nude photographs, and videos over a period of years. One woman says that Mark Lamb sent photos of his genitals. Sir, you're my age. Another woman said the sheriff engaged in ongoing sexting while publicly presenting himself as a moral conservative and devoted family man, a Mormon family man. That contradiction became gasoline on the fire. Now, I don't know if you've spent any time in Arizona, but particularly in the Gilbert and Queen Creek corridor, public image is everything. Now, Scottsdale image is also everything, but it's a different image. In Gilbert and Queen Creek, people are supposed to be stable. Marriage is sacred. Sexual morality is constantly discussed. And men in positions of authority, especially priesthood-holding law enforcement figures, are treated with automatic respect. You don't have to do anything to earn respect. If you are in a Mormon community and you are an active member of the church, people know you pay your tithing, you hold a church job, you are automatically given respect. So when women in the area began privately comparing screenshots and stories, the scandal wasn't merely personal, it was cultural and political and potentially devastating. Especially because by this point, Mark Lamb was no longer just a sheriff. He was becoming a national Republican figure. According to the Arizona Republic, Stannard approached leaders inside the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and she told these leaders about Mark Lamb's behavior. I start moving around and getting all wound up. My hair gets wild. This part of the story is particularly explosive in Mormon culture because church discipline is deeply serious within LDS communities. They want to put this image out that if you report sexual misconduct involving a prominent priesthood-holding member, especially a public figure, that it will trigger investigations, disciplinary councils, or restrictions on church participation. And I am here to tell you, as a born and raised Mormon who left the church when I was 38, I'm 55 now, do the math, that is not the way it works. The Mormon church has a very long history of covering for people engaged in bad behavior, sometimes criminal behavior. It all depends on how high up you are. Now, this woman, Stannard, told reporters that an LDS official high up in the church informed her that the church would take care of this, meaning Mark Lamb. And to her, that was very important because from her perspective, it sounded like accountability was coming. She believed church leaders understood the seriousness of the allegations and intended to intervene. But according to Stannard, that is not what happened. Instead, she felt isolated, blamed, and devastated while Mark Lamb's public image remained intact. This is shunning. This is religious shunning. If you come forward and dare to speak on someone who is praised and lauded and celebrated, you become the bad guy. You broke the code. Okay, maybe we all know something bad's going on, but we look the other way for the sake of the church. This happens in a lot of religions. But then things became even darker. Stannard claimed that Mark Lamb later confronted her publicly. They were at a farmer's market, and he wanted to talk to her about her reporting her concerns to church leadership. So right here as an ex-Mormon, I can tell you that is huge. It is supposed to be that if you go to a church leader with information about another member, they're never supposed to tell where that information came from. So the fact that Mark Lamb knew it was her that reported him, that is a huge problem. Stannard said Mark Lamb approached her aggressively and warned her there would be, quote, collateral damage. Now, to be clear, Mark Lamb and his representatives have denied wrongdoing and characterized the allegations as politically motivated attacks filled with misinformation. Fake news, everybody, fake news. But this woman felt intimidated, and you can see why. you have to understand the context of the power imbalance here. This wasn't just some random guy from the church. This was their sheriff, a television sheriff, a politically connected sheriff, a sheriff with supporters, influence, media relationships, and even a Trump endorsement. Don't rock the boat, Jillian. But this woman apparently has screenshots and messages, explicit conversations where people were circulating very sexual material. In your daily, regular life, that might not mean anything. But in this world, that is no. Once screenshots exist, even in this day and age of AI, scandals become harder to contain. Mormon churches are very efficient at covering up scandal, and it takes a lot for people to get information out. But I'm going to tell you what, no intelligence agency on earth moves information faster than suburban Mormon women after Relief Society. This scandal was no longer just a private marital issue. It was becoming something much bigger. And eventually, the journalists started digging. All modern scandal usually boils down to one thing: receipts. Not rumors or whispers or somebody told me. Screenshots, texts, photos, messages, digital evidence. And according to the reporting surrounding Mark Lamb, there was a lot of it. The Arizona Republic investigation has described women producing screenshots of communications with Mark Lamb, including sexually explicit messages and images. They have reported on this. I'm assuming they went through a vetting process, checking IP addresses and things like that. But I don't know. I mean, it would surprise me if a news outlet that big did not vet the information. So I'm just relaying what has been reported. The reporting also describes years of private conversations involving flirtation, sexting, emotional manipulation allegations, and attempts to suppress the discussion of these relationships. Now, one of the women that we're talking about today is known publicly, and her name is Tammy Peacock. According to reporting later amplified by outlets like the Daily Beast, Tammy Peacock exchanged years of messages with Mark Lamb. She describes emotional attachment, manipulation, and secrecy surrounding the relationship. But here is the thing. Tammy Peacock died in a car accident in 2021. Now, as you can imagine, there are conspiracy theories online stating that this wasn't an accident. It appears to be an accident. Her death added another tragic and emotionally complicated layer to an already explosive story. The allegations surrounding Jillian Stannard, they continue to grow and become more detailed. The Arizona Republic has published the screenshots saying that Mark Lamb is warning about collateral damage. And for the conspiracy theorists, you can imagine with another woman dead, the words collateral damage take on new meaning. These are conversations where Jillian and Mark, or Tammy and Mark, are changing, they're changing the definition of what it means to be ward members. These are very explicit photos and sexual communications. Now, some reporters asked Mark Lamb about the nude images and explicit material, and he avoids directly answering the questions. He'll tell the reporters things like, call me directly if you have questions. So I can talk to you in private, put my spin on it. And again, Lamb's attorneys have strongly disputed these allegations and claimed that these stories are false and defamatory. But politically, the damage is, I don't know, in this day and age, maybe he's going to become emperor of the world. We've got the cowboy sheriff here, the conservative family values candidate. And by the way, there are certain phrases in the English language that we use that make my blood boil. Broken home is one of those. My home is not broken just because I am divorced. My children are not broken because I am divorced. Conservative family values is another one of those phrases that just, I come from a wonderful family, a Mormon family. They are wonderful people, and they would be wonderful people even if they weren't Mormon and even if they weren't conservative, because that's just who they are. Attaching the word conservative Mormon or conservative family values to any human being, it's not only false and phony because those people aren't always good. It is demeaning to other people who have very high morals and very good ethics that aren't conservative and don't have a family that might look like a Norman Rockwell painting. So I hate that phrase, and I hate that I have to keep saying it in this episode. But this is a public Mormon lawman now facing allegations involving sexting, explicit photos, extramarital relationships, intimidation, and the church basically covering it up for him. Now, I searched high and low as to whether or not any of these relationships ever became physically intimate. There are people that say yes, they were. There are people that say no, there were not. So I ain't touching it. And we all know that by 2022, 23, 24, conservative politics has become intensely image-driven. Republican candidates build brands around morality, anti-corruption messaging, Christianity, and protecting families. I'll tell you who we need to protect families from, but Mark Lamb fit perfectly into that ecosystem until he didn't. Then came the Arizona Republic front page. And for people in Arizona, especially Mormon communities, it landed like a grenade. This ain't random gossip online or Reddit or TikTok drama. This is the state's largest newspaper putting the allegations directly onto page 1 with giant black letters. He messed up my life. Underneath sat smiling family photographs and images tied to the LDS Church itself. The symbolism is brutal. The article essentially argued that behind the public image of America's Sheriff was a years-long secret life that harmed marriages, friendships, and entire social circles. But perhaps most damaging of all was the implication that church leadership may have known concerns existed long before the public did. And that element transformed the story from simple political scandal into something much larger in the minds of many readers across the Southwest. Mormon communities have already spent years dealing with accusations involving secrecy, institutional protection, image management, and the shielding of powerful men. So when readers saw allegations involving church leaders promising to take care of this, many immediately interpreted the story through that lens, whether that's fair or not. Suddenly this isn't merely about sex. It's about power and image and protection and influence. And whether a man marketed to conservative America as a moral lawman had actually been living a very different reality behind closed doors. The sheriff, who spent years policing other people, was now facing public scrutiny himself. And the story was only getting started. At this point, the story becomes two competing realities. And depending on who you believe, Mark Lamb is either the victim of a coordinated smear campaign or a powerful public figure finally being confronted with years of behavior that remained hidden from voters. What we know now for certain is surprisingly narrow. What is alleged is much broader. The Arizona Republic spent months investigating claims involving Mark Lamb. They interviewed multiple women, they reviewed these screenshots, and they examined allegations that had circulated privately for years inside Mormon and political circles. According to that reporting, multiple women alleged Lamb engaged in sexting, exchanged these very explicit images, and then he intimidated women when they said they were going to expose what was happening. Now, I will say there is some specific language involving Jillian Stannard that says inappropriate sexual conduct and relationships. So I don't know if that means actual physical contact or not. And I understand that for non-Mormon people, the church saying they were going to take care of something and knowing about this might not seem like a big deal. But for Latter-day Saints, it is. Church discipline can carry enormous consequences, socially and spiritually, for the people that believe. Membership privileges can be restricted, callings can be removed, temple recommends can be revoked, and in serious cases, membership is jeopardized. I mean, they finally excommunicated Timmy Manpanties. And Jillian Stannard claims that she sat by and watched the church continue to treat Mark Lamb as this celebrated law enforcement officer while she was, kind of shoved out the door. In the reporting, it states that Tammy Peacock was also exchanging these messages, but that because she died in the car crash, she cannot come forward and back up Jillian Stannard's claims. Are there still receipts in existence that were, on Tammy Peacock's phone? I don't know. Mark Lamb claims that him using the words collateral damage has been taken out of context. And I want to be very clear, Mark Lamb has not been charged with any crime. No criminal case exists, which is why this story is on my Dark Stories playlist. No court has found him liable for misconduct. So where does this leave the Mormon Church? Well, that's where things become murky. The church is famously private about disciplinary matters. Even when discipline occurs, church officials are not supposed to discuss it. The person can discuss it, but the church isn't supposed to. The only reason that we know Timmy Manpanties has been excommunicated is because he said it. So we don't know if the church has taken any disciplinary action against Mark Lamb, but they haven't defended him either. In classic Mormon fashion, the institution itself has largely remained silent. But that silence has created a vacuum. Critics see it as protection. Supporters see it as appropriate confidentiality. Everybody else is left guessing, which is probably exactly where the church prefers the matter to remain. But here in the summer of 2026, the scandal has escaped the chapel walls. And now the voters have to decide what they believe, the allegations or the image. The most fascinating part of this story may be what has happened after the allegations became public. Because if this were almost any other political party in almost any other era, a front-page newspaper story involving allegations of sexting, nude photographs, extramarital relationships, the Mormon Church might have ended a campaign overnight. Oh, the good old days. Remember a few months ago when it came out that Democratic candidate was inappropriately talking to women? I can't even remember his name now because they got rid of him so fast. He's gone. But Mark Lamb is not. As of late May 2026, Mark Lamb remains one of the strongest candidates in Arizona's 5th congressional district race. The Republican primary is shaping up, and it looks like it's going to be Mark Lamb and another guy, businessman. Mark Lamb continues campaigning and has retained the endorsement of President Donald Trump. Birds of a feather. Arizona's 5th district is one of the most Republican congressional districts in the state. In other words, if Lamb wins the Republican primary, he has a very strong path to Congress. Right now, he appears to be one of the contenders. The Republican primary is scheduled for July 21st, 2026. Even after the scandal broke, political observers have continued treating Mark Lamb as a serious contender rather than a collapsing candidate. This is the guy you want representing your state? I just can't handle the hypocrisy. Ultimately, this isn't just a story about Mark Lamb. It's a story about modern politics. It's a story about celebrity and branding. It's a story about what voters are willing to overlook, even when it's right in front of their face. Mark Lamb's supporters argue that the allegations are unproven, politically timed, and intended to destroy a conservative candidate. His critics argue the allegations reveal years of hypocrisy hidden behind a carefully crafted image of Mormon morality and family values. The voters of Arizona's 5th district will eventually decide which version they believe. So where does the story stand today? Well, the allegations are public. The denials are public. The screenshots have been described. Marriages are over. Accusations have reached the front page, and the church is staying quiet. The man at the center of all continues to run for Congress, and that cowboy hat remains firmly in place. Whether this becomes a footnote in Mark Lamb's career or the scandal that ends it will likely be decided not by church leaders or reporters or social media. It will be decided by Republican voters in Arizona this July. And for a man who built an entire career around image, reputation, and trust, that will be the most important judgment yet. Oh boy, we live in ridiculous times. Ridiculous, serious, scary times. Hit the like button if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more from me. I've got 2 podcasts. One is Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. One is 15-Minute Mysteries with Stacy Lee, and they are both on Apple and Spotify. I sure appreciate you spending a little bit of your day with me. I know how many thousands of options you guys have to, watch things, listen to things. So the fact that you choose my channel, I know I say this all the time, it just means the world to me. Stay safe, my friends. Be kind to each other. And I will see you next time on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Bye.